Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. Each week, people ask me questions and on the Wednesday videos, and then I answer those questions on the following Wednesday video. Just before I get into the answers, I just want to say that this channel has celebrated a very special occasion. Yesterday was the 5th year this channel has been around. I was surprised actually myself, because really I only have been active the last maybe three years or so. So it's always cool to hit a milestone. That was a pretty big milestone. The next big milestone that I'll be hitting actually is I'm almost at 1 million views. I can't believe that I've gotten that many people to watch my videos. So it's pretty cool. Pretty excited about all those milestones. Okay, but let's get into the questions for this week. The first question comes into Archivist Adrift. Like you, I've been a collector since my childhood. It wasn't always comics, but it was something. Stickers, baseball cards, garbage pail kids, ancient coins, etc. But every now and then you meet a collector who seems obsessed, and their collecting seems unhealthy, or at least wasteful. Have you ever met collectors who couldn't see the line between just a hobby and an unhealthy obsession? What do you think are some telltale signs of unhealthy collecting habit? And what do you think that you've ever come close to that line? What advice would you offer to those who are crossing the line between hobby and obsession? Well, I have to be honest. I'm always honest in these questions. I feel like I've crossed the line personally. That a lot of the way that I think has become obsessive in terms of the way I collect. So I can answer it from that perspective, that I am an obsessive collector. And telltale signs that I see in myself are things like thinking about how money is used. Okay, so when it's healthy, you have a little bit of money aside, and it's seen as something that's fun. Okay, when it's an obsession, you take money from things that you should be spending money on and spending it on something that is your obsession, and that's bad. And I've crossed that line many times. So it's one of those things you got to be careful with. Where you don't want to sacrifice things that are important for things that are not so important. Like, all of this stuff at the end of the day isn't really important. I love my comics. I sometimes I become very obsessive and very competitive with my comic collecting as well. The other thing that I see with obsessive behavior is when you talk to somebody that's an obsessed person, that's all they can talk about. It's like their whole focus is on that one thing, and generally that's a telltale sign that there's a problem. Sometimes it's sort of like you got to get out more and do other things, and I see that in myself, like that. I do a lot of comic stuff. Fortunately, I have my business to balance it out, and I'm always trying to balance out my compulsiveness with a healthy dose of my business and my family as well, where I try to spend time with them, or focus on my business more, or do things that take me away from my obsessive hobby, I guess. But generally, I've met other collectors that are the same way. Actually, one of the really interesting ones was I think I watched when I watched the Robert Crumb video, and I sort of watched the way he obsessed. He obsessed over records. I guess he was a big record collector, and he could see that kind of like obsessive mentality towards the things that he was collecting. And I really do think that it's, we as collectors are always on that line, right? Where we where uh, we want to find more, but at the same time, we have to be careful not to step across the line where we're just searching for the sake of searching, and that can be real thing. You know, the question always becomes, how big of a collection do you want? And the question for an obsessed collector is, there is no answer. Probably a healthier answer is, I will curate a collection. And that's a much healthier way of thinking of the hobby. I think of other collectors that I've met where they say, well, I only want to have 1,000 books or 100 books or some number. And when you set it like sort of a threshold for that, a couple things can come out of it that are really healthy. One, if you hit your threshold, then you can reevaluate that threshold, first of all. Or you can say, well, okay, I hit my threshold. If I want to add more to my collection, what should I remove from my collection? And one that I kind of respect that does this quite well is Ryan from Automatic Comics. I think he has 50 books on his list that he will keep. And whenever he gets another big book, he'll think, okay, which of these other big books do I want to get rid of? And that's a very healthy way of doing it, because not only do you curate a really beautiful collection, but you can actually, when you add to that collection, you can use the funds of the things that you remove from the collection to fund even bigger books. So they're constantly improving that very curated collection. So I can respect that. I wish I could do that myself. I'm not really there yet, but I'm one of those people that wants it all. I am very obsessive that way. And I do see it as a little bit unhealthy personally. I think that part of the reason is the type of personality I have. And I did judo for many years, and I would do judo like 2 or 3 times a week, and for several, like 3 or 4 hours, or 2 to 3 hours per session. And and when I was in Korea, I was doing it like 5 to 6 times a week, actually. But that's kind of my way of thinking. And even when I wasn't going to judo sessions, I would train, like, physically or mentally, like go through the moves and, prepare myself. So that's just the very nature of me. I'm very obsessive. I get into something and I go all in on it. And that can be a good thing, because you can get really good at whatever it is that you're focused on, but it's also a bad thing. So as I said, sometimes it's sort of like you just sort of gotta walk away from it for a little while, takes a breath of fresh air, and reevaluate the world. That there's other things in the world other than comics. It's hard to believe that, but there are other things, and sometimes we all have to realize that. So I'm not sure if I really answered the question, but I hope I did. But so next question comes from K Munin. What are the Grail books that you have yet to acquire, and that you will be collecting habits? Will your collecting habits change if you were ever able to get a hold of them? So probably my habits won't change, because I've already gotten Grails and my habits didn't really change, but my perspective has. So what I mean by that is, like, when I got my All-Star 8, I really didn't think that was attainable. But when I got the book, all of a sudden I thought it was attainable. And then I had that vision that, hey, I can go after that next big book. Like, sort of opened my eyes to that possibility. But big books that I'm chasing right now, I guess, would be Black Cat Mystery number 50, Chamber of Chills 23, Cinderella Love 25, Flash, uh, Flash Comics number 1, and then All American Comics 16 would be a nice one. Batman 1. So those are the big books that I'd be interested in. And yeah, maybe someday an Action 1. That'd be cool, just to have an Action 1 in my collection, or a Superman 1. I'd like to have those big books just because they're so cool. I just think they're really cool. But first I have to win the lottery, then I'll get those books. So yeah, those are the ones that I'm thinking. And I'll showcase those when I do. Okay. So yeah, next question comes from Robbie Josephs. When did you start feeling proud of your collection? I felt proud when I hit 5,000, mostly gold, silver, and bronze. So when I just before I started, like maybe about 2 years before I started my YouTube channel, I really didn't feel very proud about my collection, because as a comic collection, I should say. My Warren collection was quite strong at that point. It was complete by that point. But my comic collection in many ways was my childhood collection. And it didn't really have many grails. It didn't have any particular books in it. It had, I had like, the Bone Run and stuff from the 90s. I was big on the 90s. But it didn't really have much Silver Age grails or anything that was of note. But when that, like around 2017, 2016, around there, I started picking up things like, the very first appearance of Black Panther, or other books that kind of added a little bit more depth to my collection, more weight to my collection. And it wasn't really until I did pick up that All-Star 8 that I felt really proud of my collection. That really I felt like, oh, now I have something. Like, I felt like, All-Star 8 is such a major book. It's the first appearance of Wonder Woman. It's a book that is really one of the top 10, if not, I think it's one of the top 10 books. It's in the $1 Million Club. It's just one of those big books that kind of comic collectors go after. And to have that in my collection was a sign of, like, I felt real pride in my collection. Like, oh, I have something. I have something that is of merit. So really, that was the book that all of a sudden I felt like I had a bit of bragging rights. Okay. So yeah, that was that was the one once I had that book, I felt really proud. But I sort of filled in a few of the gaps before that with some minor Silver Age keys, and I really made that my focus at first when I got back into collecting comics, was get those Silver Age keys, make it a real, strong Silver Age collection. And then I went also for the Bronze Age keys. But then it was really the All-Star 8 that gave me that that feeling of pride. Okay, next question comes from Jerry Penix. Who did the art on Wild West Weekly? Okay, so Wild West Weekly was actually like pulp magazine that came out in 1902. Frank Tutsi was the creator of it, and it ran all the way up to, within his publishing, it ran up to 1928. Then it was switched over to Street and Smith, and it ran up till 1943. So it ran like 822 issues. It was like a really long running series, actually. Now, it had some great writers, but it also had one of the best painting artists I can think of, which is Norman Saunders. His artwork, if you see it, Norman Saunders is really just, it's amazing artwork. But they also had another artist, M. Bromhofer, or Hofer, who was also, so Walter M. Bromhofer, or Hofer, I should say, Hofer. And he was also really, really good. So you got two great artists that would do the covers. Now the interiors, as I said, is a pulp magazine, so there would be some artwork, but mostly it was printed material. So yeah, so beautiful covers by those two artists. Okay, next question, last question actually. Very short episode this week. Comes from Fiddle Chips. Hi Alan, this is a question about the liquid on your Chamber of Chills 19. I have a very low grade copy. The liquid in my glass is very faded. Just this week, I went to a friend's house who has a CBCS 7.5 copy. The liquid in his glass is faded. Then there is your copy, which seems to have very nice color strike. Am I noticing a difference, or are my eyes deceiving me? Well, I think the color strike is quite strong on my book. I'll show it to you. Actually, I'm going to take it out of the plastic. It's still in the plastic here. I'll take it out so you can see it and you can tell me. So it's a fairly light purple, but not faded looking. You know, they have to have the liquid being pretty light. You know, if it was a dark purple, it wouldn't, you know, the art wouldn't even make sense because you wouldn't see that, you know, the skull in the reflection of or within the water, I should say, or within the alcohol. It's an alcoholic drink. So the point is they had to have a very light purple, but it doesn't look faded from what I can see. So if yours is like this, where it's not really faded, it's just very light color. The best way is actually not to go by the liquid. It's to go by like other things, like how bright is the red on her dress, how green is the skeleton's hand, how yellow is her hair. Those are the things that will give you a better sense of whether or not your cover is faded or not. The liquid is this sort of translucent light purple. But yeah, this is my favorite, by the way. My favorite Golden Age pre-code horror book. I just think it's so great. I just love this book. Another one I'm proud of. Okay, so that is this week's questions. If you have a question you would like answered, put it in the comments below and I will answer it next week. I'll even get into my hobby obsession. So I always try to be open and honest with everyone, and I hope that my honesty appeals to you guys. Okay, thanks again for watching. Bye for now.